Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to a special series of the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. This is the Rabbi Orlofsky Pesach Program. Now, let me explain to you how clever that is. Because when you go away to a hotel, they don't say you're going away to a hotel, they say you're going to a Pesach program. And I was, as I've mentioned, invited to a number of Pesach programs. And when I told them that I was going to bring my family along, so there were two basic reactions. The nicer people said, well, not that you're not worth it, but, our budget doesn't allow it. And other people said, are you out of your mind? But the idea remains the same, and that is I'm staying home for Pesach, which is really okay for me. Now, I'm not going to do one of those rants about, it's not right to go to a Pesach hotel and you should stay home for Pesach, because I could give you a list of rabbis who've done this, and then they went away to Pesach hotels. Which reminds me of what Mark Twain, the American humorist, used to say. Keep your words soft and sweet. It'll be easier when you have to eat them later. So I have gone to Pesach hotels. I don't enjoy it as much as staying home. I actually enjoy staying home. I like being on my own schedule. I was once in a hotel where we were the last Seder, and like everybody had already cleared out, and they cleared off everything, and the waiters were just sitting there waiting for us to finish, which is so uncomfortable. And so you feel like I have to move it along. I don't have to move it along here. Everything's great. We take our time, and we'll spend as much time as we want and do what we want and how we want it. And it's a special thing, I think. Not to take away. I'm not going to say the times I went away to hotels that they weren't extremely enjoyable. A wonderful experience for people. So I'm not saying a person shouldn't go away. I'm not saying, there's a problem. Personally, I go through the ads just to see who has been invited instead of me. But I look at all of the Pesach programs throughout the United States and Canada and Mexico and Europe and Eretz. I don't know how they fill up. All these places fill up. It's absolutely amazing. So so that's fine. I'm not talking about that. But when you go away to one of these places, they say we're going to a Pesach program. So this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Pesach program. Only thing is, the chap is that you see the show is a program. So it's a program. It's a Pesach program. It's unbelievable. The amount of thought and preparation that goes into this show, you can't even believe it. Of course, my producer was able to come up with the beautiful matzah sign and letters. This is my matzah tie, which I took out special for these series of shows, because I wear this at the Seder. Yeah. And there's always somebody clever when I wear it to shul, Pesach night, and they say, I guess you got crumbs all over your tie. Oh, that's a knee slapper. Let's slap the knee on that one. Anyway, but it's great. I'm so happy that people have an opportunity to use the same exact line year after year. If I go to Olam Haba, and it's an iffy proposition, but if I do go, it'll definitely be for the times that I keep my mouth shut, not for the times that I've talked. I do a lot of talking, and it's a story. Maybe we'll talk about this in a different context, but just there was one time I was speaking on Tisha B'Av. We used to have a program here on Tisha B'Av where we would explain the kinnis. Not all the speakers stuck to the program. Some of them gave drushes, but we would explain the kinnis. I used to go out to Moshav Matasyahu and hear Rabbi Leff do this. Rabbi Foyer, when I was in America for Tisha B'Av, I went to his shul in Muncie. He did it. So I've seen this where you mamish explain the kinna. You speak so that when you say the kinna, it's more meaningful. So I had gotten into trouble on occasion. People weren't always happy with what I said, if you can imagine such a thing. It's amazing that, you can sometimes say something that appears innocuous. I did a podcast, 2 podcasts ago, where I talked about how we live in a disposable society. By the way, it's not mechidish. A lot of people have said this. And a person writes me and says, "You're encouraging hoarding." I said, "I'm encouraging hoarding? Where did I say encouraging hoarding?" Yeah, on your podcast. So I listened to it again, and I wrote it back. I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. Where did I encourage hoarding?" He said, "Yeah, the last 3 minutes." So I listened to it again. I said, "I don't see where I said anything encouraging. Maybe you could tell me the exact line." It says, "You said, think twice before you throw something out." I guess I should have said, "Don't think at all. Throw everything out." Or maybe you should only think once, but don't rethink it. As soon as all of the machshavtai that you should throw it away immediately. Don't think about it again. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. That's what you took away from think twice before you throw something away. So my point is just that I say things and sometimes people take it in the wrong context. There was a Jewish publication I'm not going to mention, but they asked me to write for them. I didn't want to write for them. So the person who was writing a particular column would call me up and ask me what I thought and then write it up. And I answered certain questions. And somebody wrote a letter to the editor complaining about what I said and completely misunderstood what I said. They took it completely out of context and wrote... And that's when I stopped even answering questions. Because I used to write a column in the Hamodia on Chinuch. And if ever they got a letter of complaint, first they would send it to me, so that you have an opportunity to respond. You just publish a letter without the author having an opportunity to respond to it. And especially in a situation like this where the person completely misunderstood what I said. My wife says, "What do you care? What do you get upset for?" I get upset. I answer every one of your emails. At least I try to. The longer ones that require some thought takes me a little longer. But, I really try to respond and to take it. I take it seriously. People just take what I say out of context. So anyway, so it was Tisha B'Av, and I had situations where people had not fully understood what I was saying, apparently, and I got into trouble. So I decided to find the most innocuous thing to speak about. And I took the kinna about the Gemaras that had been burnt in Paris, 24 cartload of Gemaras, Talmud. And I used it as an opportunity to talk about covered Beis HaKnesses and covered Svarim. And, gosh, how could you argue with me? It's like coming out in favor of tooth decay. You know what I mean? Like, I'm saying to be Mechabed Shuls, Mechabed Svarim. Like, what do you want from me? So there was a letter to the editor in the Jewish press. This must have been 1995, if I recall correctly. I had the letter. I don't know if I still have it. And I thought it was intriguing. And it said, 50 years ago, what would a person have done to be able to sit in shul? 50 years ago, what would a person have done to be able to answer Kaddish, to be able to hear Kriyas HaTorah? 50 years ago, what would a person have been able to do to hold a siddur? And now that we have all these things, do we take it for granted? Do we appreciate it? Or do we talk through our davening? Or do we talk through the laning? And we talk through a Kaddish? And then he threw in this line. Maybe if we saw our shuls turned into stables, it's because we turned them into stables. Now, between me, you, and the lamppost, that's not a really novel concept. There is a concept of Midah Keneged Midah. If I'm not mistaken, it's actually a Mishnah in Soita. It's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The concept of measure for measure, is really pretty legitimate, Anyways, I'm reading this. There's a fellow sitting on the floor and says, "I must object." This was not a group participation event, you understand? So I was a little taken aback. And he says, "You're saying that our shuls and yeshivas were turned into stables because we did something wrong? Nobody can question the Kedoshim. No one can say you did anything wrong." I said, the point I was trying to make is, he says, "I lost 80 relatives in the Holocaust. You're saying it's because they did something wrong? No one has a right to question the Kedoshim. Nobody." And he started crying. And I took a few seconds to more or less size up the situation. And I said, we should all have a nechama. And I sat down. Rabbi Orlofsky, who's part of the famous speaker club, came over to me afterwards, and he says, there were many famous speakers who were in the audience because everybody came. Some people were speaking, some people just came because it makes it for a much more meaningful tishba when you spend a little time explaining the kinos. He says, a lot of famous speakers there, and I went over to one of them and said, I thought of 4 excellent answers Orlofsky could have given. And the other fellow said, I thought of 6. And we both agreed that none of them was as good as yours, which led me to conclude that I do my best speaking when I keep my mouth shut. So when people come over and they tell you the same joke about the matzah tie year after year, and I smile politely, so there's no question about it. That's, if I go to heaven, it'll be for the times I keep my mouth shut. Even though people have said things to me over the world, over my life, and a person who keeps their mouth shut, say the Chazal, so all their chatayim are forgiven and everything, all their tefillas are answered. I was davening for the Amid once, and a guy started screaming at me at the end of davening. He was screaming and screaming. And I todah, he's yelling at me, People were telling me already, stop. So, okay. You're going to yell at me? I've been insulted by professionals, you understand? A guy attacked me once on the internet. He wrote, "You're nothing but a third-rate seminary teacher." I wrote back, "That's not an insult, that's a job description." You're gonna insult me, So, gosh, nothing anyone can say to me is as much as what my Rebbeim used to say to me. Trust me. But this guy's screaming at me, and okay. And after he leaves, the guy runs over and says, "Listen, I have a relative who's very sick. Please say a kibbutz tehillim to him in the schus of the fact that you keep your mouth shut." It's so interesting. Nobody ever said that when I speak. No one ever said, "Well, it was a great drasha. Please daven for so-and-so." Nope. When I keep my mouth shut, that's when you do the best. Anyway, so I got my matzah tie and I got the matzah sign. And we're going to talk about Inyanei Pesach. Now, the plan is, that we're going to do this series. We're going to try to have this come out every 2 days. We're going to try. This is a tremendous amount of time and effort that's going to go into this for my producer. I, of course, just sit here and talk. And if there's no camera, I just sit in the same exact chair right where I am. And I just talk. I hang up my Svarim poster sometimes when I'm traveling, and I just get a chair and I sit here and I just talk, even if there's no camera, if there's nobody there. I was recently at a Shabbaton, and they said, you're supposed to start speaking at whatever it is, 1:30 exactly. I come in 1:30, there's nobody in the room, so I get up. Thank you all for coming. What a pleasure. And I spoke for about 5 minutes. After a while, I started to feel a little silly, and I left, Then afterwards, people said, "Oh, there are people waiting." I said, "Well, they weren't when I started." So I went back. But anyway, so we're going to try to do this. We're going to try to do this because we know that you're cleaning for Pesach, or Nabuch, you're packing to go away for Pesach, whatever it is. We want to be here for you to bring you this sense of Pesach, the sense of doing something special. So that's our introduction to our series. This is number 1 in the series of the special Rabbi Orlofsky Show Pesach program. And I always had a chukah. I'm afraid to do it because I'm always afraid to do things. Yeah. Homer Simpson. Someone showed me a quote. Homer Simpson where he says, "I don't know, Marge, trying is the first step to failing." There's a lot of wisdom there, yeah. It was actually, in full disclosure, somebody lent me these books called The Bathroom Readers, So they had juxtaposed quotes from Homer Simpson and Homer, the Greek author, philosopher. And it's amazing how often they would actually relate. But trying is the first step to failing. But I've always had this chukah that I wanted to make an Eretz Yisrael Pesach program. And find a relatively small, nice hotel, and make a Pesach. Basically, I want the people to feel like they're coming to spend Pesach with me and my family, and I have, Baruch Hashem, a very talented family. Yeah, I have a daughter who teaches in seminaries. I have a daughter who teaches dance. I have a daughter who teaches Zumba. I have a son-in-law who plays the keyboard, and I've got another one who sings and composes songs. I've got such a I'm leaving out people, but I've got such a varied and my son is a yeshiva gedola. I have such a varied staff, and I'd be able to put together such a fun program. It'd be so great. But it means that I have to actually sign a contract and make a commitment, and then hope that people show up. Otherwise, be sitting there by myself. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for coming. Anyway, but I that would be something that would be really enjoyable. But the point is to combine. Basically having everybody at my house for Pesach, only having it in a hotel because I really, don't have enough room here for even the immediate family, if everybody comes. Nevertheless, all of you, my extended family, my online community. Anyway, but, okay, so if you're packing or if you're cleaning or whatever you're doing, so we're going to talk. I'm going to talk about different Pesach themes, and here's the first thing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Pesach cleaning. Pesach cleaning. There was a fellow who was, this story is at least 20 years old, maybe 25 years old. He was trying to put together cable shows that he was trying to sell to different cable stations, Jewish topics. And he wanted me to host one. I would have my own TV show. Funny how that works out, eh? And we filmed a pilot episode. It was before Pesach, different people. We had a Pesach theme to it. And one was Rebbitzin. And her what she was maintaining is that cleaning for Pesach is fun for the family. Now, this depends, in my opinion, on a lot of different factors. Your house, your family. You have a very small house, a really positive family, then yes, it could be a lot of fun. If you have children, like many people do, where while the cleaning lady is cleaning up, they're sitting on the couch playing with their phone, and she says, "Listen, could you maybe move your feet so that I could vacuum?" And she's like, "Oh gosh, I can't believe it. It's like I don't get a break around here." It just never stops. So then, I don't know, clean for Pesach could be a little less exciting. So I want to talk about it from two different points of view, one practical and one more philosophical. We just come out of Purim. What is the purpose of Purim? The purpose of Purim is, in case you think there's any place in your house where there's no crumbs, forget about it. We send you shalach manos with little pretzels and little cookies and all kinds of little hummus stuff, and then we make you bring in all kinds of small children to run around your house and hide them all over the place. You never know where it's hidden. You never know where it's hidden. And you have to go through everything trying to find it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Now, those of you who have OCD, it's definitely kedai to start early and get Prozac. That's what you should do. Go to a registered psychiatrist, and let them give you some pills so that you calm down. Because there's no limit. There's no limit how crazy you can go. And if you have a small house like they used to have, basically one big room, it wasn't a big deal. You just basically raked the dirt floor, and whitewashed the walls, changed the thatch on the roof. You were basically done. It was like a new house. There wasn't much to do. Houses get larger, it gets more complicated. Yeah. So even those of us who live here in Eretz Yisrael in relatively small apartments. I lived in Far Rockaway. I had a 2-family house, and with a deck and a backyard and a basement. I was going to put in a skylight, but the people upstairs objected. And someone's living downstairs, so there goes my basement. It's like, I have a little chutzner outside, and it's nice because then the neighbors' children throw things at us when we go outside. But I know what it is. A nice house, but even here, okay, so we have a relatively small apartment, but still, you have to, a lot of cleaning that goes into it. My cleaning lady, Raji, from Sri Lanka, has been so nervous about Pesach already since Tu B'Shvat, and this is a leap year, so that's like a long time. She had somebody come in to do all the windows, and then she closed all the trissim so that they shouldn't get dirty from the rain. So we've been living in darkness. I guess that's when we make the bracha, Pesach may orlo chayshech, because we can finally open the trissim and get some light in here. But people get very, very nervous. So what do you do? So first of all, you have to accept your limitations. You're not going to be able to do everything, and not everything is essential to do for Pesach. So this is an ongoing discussion in my family, because even though this is just the poster of my svarim, I do have a whole bunch of book cabinets filled with svarim, and I like to clean it out before Pesach, and this is a terrible job. My daughter Yafa, who just had a baby boy, Mazel Tov. I was in America. She was the only one who would come and help me with the bookcase. Get up there, and she would go back. And she actually once worked for Nela Elef in their library, so she has a keen affinity for Sfarim. But so people said, "There's no chametz there. No chametz." You're worried you brought a sefer to the table. No, don't bring it to the table. Yeah. Nobody's going to open up a safe and find a couple of crumbs and go, Don't worry about it. But to me, if you can, you clean the bookshelves, right? But let's say you can't. I heard on the radio once, this Rav, this woman called her up the night of B'dikas Chametz and says, do I have to clean out the refrigerator? So he's like, yeah, that's like Pesach 101. She goes, but I have no koyach left. I'm exhausted. Says, why? I was in the children's room. I was changing over the clothes. I was wiping out the shelves. I was rewashing and folding everything. And it's, that's not the... In fact, there's a counterintuitive suggestion I saw once in the Hamodia that I think is, and I've actually tried this, which is absolutely brilliant. They say, do the kitchen first. Counterintuitive, because you're going to keep using it. Right. Now, I can't speak for everybody, but by the side of the oven, if you have a built-in oven, this doesn't apply so much, but by the side of the oven, it tends to get, really yichi from the stuff that splash over. That takes a long time to clean off. So you clean all of that, and you clean the refrigerator, and you clean the freezer. Good, you're still using stuff. Put down some paper and keep using it. You'll have to clean it again, avo'eno doime, to doing it the second time than doing it the first time. It's a much easier job if you've done it already. So to be able to get things going, but so you got to be realistic. You got to understand. But there's a process here of searching, because that was the story of going out of Egypt. That is Yetzias Mitzrayim. That is the Exodus. I heard this from Rabbi Fishman, the Mashgiach in Torah Moshe. He says, we had a mitzvah on the 10th of Nisan to take a sheep and tie it to our bedpost. Now, that was so that we could watch it, to make sure it didn't have a mum. We say in the Haggadah, Aidei D'chak, that was the pressure that they had living in Egypt. Why? Because a woman had 6 tuplets. She had 6 children at a time. So now imagine you're a small family. I have 3 kids. That's 18 kids in your little house in Egypt. Now, what do you think the reaction of the children are when you bring a sheep into the house and tie it to your bed? This one wants to ride it. This one's poking it with a stick. This one's this. And if it gets a mum, that's it. We're done. We're not getting out of here. So that meant that there was this chipazon, there was this bahala, there was this. Everybody had to concentrate and focus if you wanted to be able to watch your Korban Pesach. The way we recreate that is when we clean for Pesach. And there's little crumbs all over the place. I remember the way Rabbi Fishman put it is he says, why don't we just say you can't have fleischigs for a week? Because how far does a person walk with a pulki in his hand? You know, how many people are walking around with a piece of steak? But chametz gets everywhere. So that examination and searching is what takes so much time. So that's why now those of us who are cleaning for Pesach and preparing for Pesach and getting ready for it, the chipazon, the excitement and the action, the whole focus of it is for us to be able to have that sense that we go out becheres from avdus. There's a slavery, there's a working that we have to go through in order to then be able to have that Yeshua, to be able to have that freedom. So that's our introduction to our Pesach program. So we'll have another one, I hope, in 2 days. If you want to find out more about the show, please go to RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast. If you want to make a comment on this particular show, it's RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast/26. You want to know about upcoming events, RabbiOrlofsky.com/events. If you would like to contact me, RabbiOrlofsky.com/contact. And if you would like to sponsor an episode, it's RabbiOrlofsky.com/podcast and click on the sponsor an episode button. I'm Rabbi Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Pesach Program.